So good, so good, so good.
Everything you want for summer is at Nordstrom Rack stores now, and up to 60% off. Stock up and save on the brands you love like Vince, Sam Edelman, Frame, and Free People. Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
You said this place was steps from the water.
We just haven't found the steps yet.
How much did we save?
Enough.
Enough to get lost?
Or you could book a stay with Hilton.
Welcome to your oceanfront room, just steps from the water.
The Hilton sale is on now. Book on Hilton.com or the Hilton app and save up to 20% to get the stay you expected. When you want savings, not surprises, it matters where you stay. Hilton, for the stay.
Entering the realm between the hidden and forgotten, a slipstream caught between realities, a secret museum of the esoteric, the private library of shadows, all taking place in a world forged from mystery and caught between logic and myth. You are entering ParaReality.
Good evening, seekers of the strange and the unexplained. Welcome to ParaReality, a place where shadows whisper. Mysteries linger in the line between fact and the unknown grows razor thin. I'm Sandman, your guide through the hidden corridors of reality. Here, every question awakens a mystery, and every mystery pulls us deeper into the truth concealed in the shadows. Tonight, we step once again into the world where truth and mystery collide. Welcome, my friends, to the ParaReality Podcast. For decades, the UFO question has been framed as a technological mystery. Machines from elsewhere, visitors from different stars. But what if that framing is wrong? What if the phenomena isn't just out there, but deeply entangled with the human consciousness, belief systems, and perception itself? Well, tonight's guest has been asking that question and a lot more since 1967. Brent Raynes has spent nearly 6 decades investigating UFOs, contact experiences, apparitions, cryptids, and the strange psychological effects that often accompany them. Man, that's a long time. And his work challenged the idea that these phenomena belong in 2 separate boxes. Religious visions here, UFO encounters over there, paranormal experiences somewhere else entirely. Drawing heavily from the insights of John A. Keel, Jacques Vallée, and decades of firsthand interviews, Brent Raynes argues that we may be dealing with a single shape-shifting intelligence, one that adapts to culture, belief, and expectation, and has done so throughout recorded history. From Marian apparitions and luminous beings to humanoids carrying glowing spheres, tonight we step into the edge of reality itself. And of course, to learn more, you'll have to tune in, and find out. And I will be right back with Mr. Brent Raynes right after this.
Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer ahead to learn more. See you this summer.
At first, I didn't think it was real. I woke up to this blinding light, and I was transported to another place. Pluto TV! Then I heard a voice.
Come with me if you want to live.
There were thousands of movies and shows, and they were all free. The
truth is our secret.
It's just so beautiful.
On Pluto TV, free streaming of Terminator 2, Fringe, Arrow, The 100, and The X-Files may cause excitement, loss of sleep, and sudden belief in extraterrestrials. No credit cards or alien encounters necessary. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
ParaReality is a proud member of the Evergreen Podcast Network. For more information or to check out other shows on the network, please visit evergreenpodcast.com.
Broadcast from a secret bunker somewhere outside of Nashville, Tennessee. This is the award-winning podcast, ParaReality.
Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. My guest tonight, I've already introduced him. His name is Brent Raynes. He's a veteran UFO researcher, author, and editor who's been actively investigating the unexplained since the age of 14 years old. He's the author of Visitors from Hidden Realms, On the Edge of Reality, and John A. Keel, The Man, the Myths, and the Ongoing Mysteries. And he has served as the editor, of Alternate Perceptions magazine for more than 4 decades. Brent has interviewed countless experiencers across the U.S. and Canada. He's explored UFO encounters alongside Bigfoot sightings, poltergeist activity, religious apparitions, and altered states of consciousness. And he's participated in Native American rituals and ceremonies in search of deeper context and understanding. His work has been featured multiple times on Coast to Coast AM, and he's widely respected for bridging ufology, parapsychology, folklore, and consciousness research into a single investigative framework. Very, very unique approach. Mr. Brent Raynes, welcome to the ParaReality Podcast. It is a very, very nice to have you here.
Well, I'm very honored, Sandman. I appreciate it. I appreciate the great introduction.
Yes, sir.
It's one of those things that you were mentioning all these things, and I was thinking of all the different areas that one can cover. You just kind of get overwhelmed sometimes, It's like, where do I begin? But I think you got questions for me, so that may help.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a pleasure to finally meet you face to face, as it is, even though it's over the web here. We've been Facebook friends for a long time, and we know some of the same people, and have been orbiting each other's circle for a while. Just never actually got a chance to meet. So it's a real pleasure to finally meet you and get to talk to you, sir. And I really appreciate you being on the podcast here. And I do have a bunch of questions, so let's get right into it here. Now, all right. So Brent, you've been researching UFOs since 1967, I believe, the age of 14. That's a good long time. Now, how did you get into this, and how has your understanding? This is like a 2-part question. So, number one, how did you get into it? And number two, how has your understanding of this phenomena changed over the nearly 6 decades you've been a part of this?
Yeah, well, I was at a very young age. I was just interested in astronomy and paleontology, and my parents had taken me to the Smithsonian Institute, and I saw all those fossils of Tyrannosaurus Rex and pterodactyls and stuff on the wall, and I was really into dinosaurs, and so the history of the planet and the idea, and watching science fiction, the day the Earth stood still and so on, just intrigued by the possibilities of extraterrestrial life, things beyond everyday thought process. I was really, into all that. And then in 1966, we had all those sightings all over the country, all over the world. It was a a time of a lot of major UFO activity hitting the media. And I know in March of that year, Dr. Jalen Hynek, who was, the astronomer for Project Blue Book, went to Michigan to investigate some of the sightings there. But no matter where you were, in Maine, where I was born and raised, we had a sighting up in Bangor, Maine. A guy named John King, who claimed that he had seen this metallic-looking, 40-foot diameter, domed, metallic-looking object that was just a few feet off the ground. You could hear it moving over over some bushes that were scratching the underside. Wow. And he took out a handgun. He fired 4 rounds. 2 of them, he heard a ping sound. I guess he missed the other 2, maybe a little shaken up. But the Bangor police said he was quite, seemed to be quite frightened by something that happened to him. And they tended to seem to take his account serious. It was in the newspapers. And of course, that captured my interest, but I wasn't really ready to jump in the field yet. But then later I read a book that opened, got a lot of people involved, like myself. It was Flying Saucer: Serious Business by Frank Edwards, which was quite a popular book back in 1966. I remember it was in the Weekly Reader, and I thought, well, this looks interesting, so I made a purchase. I think I went out and had to buy another copy because I wore that one out. So
good reference material.
But then in January of '67, even though I told a high school chum that, what's the sense in us forming a UFO club, but then after reading that book, I thought, well, I guess I'll do that, So I got very involved, and a friend of mine down the street, we would get on the phone. I started collecting other books and magazines, and we'd, back then you could get on the phone and call an operator. You could go right to the county or the city or wherever, someone across, the United States had, if you had a name to go by, so you get a telephone number and address, and I made out a mimeographed form to mail to people. And,
Give me a graph. Wow, that is going back now.
yes. I had a mimeograph magazine too back in
wow,
late '60s. Yeah, Scientific Sauceritis Review, and sauceritis. It's a sauceritis, ITIS, like a disease, because I was going back to a microfiche back early on in the UFO phenomenon. I think some psychologist said it's like a disease of the mind. I call it sauceritis, and I thought I'm going to use that. So
interesting. That's good. That's interesting. I like that.
So anyway, to me, I was just focused on. I had tunnel vision. It was like sounds like extraterrestrial nuts and bolts visitation. But then, as I was engaged in corresponding with lots of people, witnesses and researchers in the field at a young age, I became involved as a representative of the state of Maine on the board of directors of a newsletter out of, it was pretty popular at the time, Saucer Scoop out of St. Petersburg, Florida. And Joanne Whitmore was the editor, and Brad Steiger, who's quite a legend in himself, wrote nearly 200 books on UFOs and paranormal during his writing career. He was the public relations guy. So I didn't get to know him real well, but I noticed at the time, although later when I wrote Visitors from Hidden Realms in 2004, he wrote the introduction to my book, so we got to know each other better at that point. But John Keel was writing a series of articles for that magazine at the time, and he also included a mail-in address in New York. So I went ahead and wrote him, and we began correspondence in October of '69, and so that was I was really intrigued because he had a perspective of where he linked all these other things, from Marian apparitions, the shamanism, the paranormal, all the various paranormal things. He said a lot of the experiences after a UFO sighting, they have poltergeist manifestations. They have all these other paranormal effects that occur. They seem to have a psychic connection. So anyway, So that's how I got started. I could. My wife's living a little dog into the studio here. Okay. So anyway, I'll pause here and let you see if there's any.
Yeah. So how has your understanding of the phenomena changed over all these decades since you first started?
Well, I'm not, as when I got in the field, I thought I knew fully the answer to this thing, and now it's like, okay, I have to really be cautious. I have to be objective and take this middle path because it's very complex and confusing phenomena. And as some of the people like Keel thought it was kind of a trickster phenomena, it doesn't always. It kind of knows it seems, well, he suggested and others that it knows the person, what their background is and culturally and all, and what their beliefs are, and it might approach them from a religious perspective or an ET or whatever, and then again it also can be, as some people are proposing, co-creation. Perhaps we project, into this, the trickster may be in part where we look in the mirror, and say, oh, there's the trickster.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective.
So
I don't think. Go ahead.
So I just very cautious. I've met a lot of people that really are in, have very strong beliefs and what and certainty in what they experienced, and I don't go about trying, diminish that or challenge that, unless, of course, if there's a real deep-rooted psychological thing, I just recommend they go to somebody else other than me.
Gotcha.
But I have, I took Keel's advice of, because as I correspond with him and shared, he was sharing a lot of things with me, and I questioned about some accusations made about him back then about, errors that appeared in his books and things and articles. And he sent me an article from a newspaper and said, see if you can make any sense out of this. He said a typesetter editor got a hold of this, and it makes no sense. And anyway, he said that a lot of times, like with his books that came out, that he would send it in, and then they'd send him, give him a chance to go over it, make sure that everything looked good. And he said he would do that, and then the book come out, and they hadn't made any of the changes that he asked.
Oh no.
Yeah,
not good.
So it's and he gave in his anomaly some specific examples too of where that happened to him and tried to make corrections. Now I'm not going to say he didn't make some mistakes because he admitted that he was always constantly writing, and he even said I produce more copy than Coral Lorenzen, Apro.
In your work, you argue that UFO encounters, religious apparitions, shamanistic visions, and contactee experiences might be manifestations of the same underlying intelligence. So why do you believe these phenomena belong under one like big umbrella instead, of separate disciplines?
Okay, I think that, I appreciate everybody pursuing whatever, because, this is such a vast field that everyone should, somebody's got to be on the Roswell thing, and somebody else has got to be on quantum physics if they're qualified, and various things. But there are, I think, a lot of commonalities. Like I know that both Keel and Valley really delved into the Fatima, Portugal events of 1917, where these young children were having visions of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and they were told that a big event was going to occur on October 13th of that year, and supposedly, reportedly, this was like a small community, and 70,000 people supposedly showed up. Quite an uproar.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of the people in Catholic Church were very happy. In fact, one time they predicted, because all these events were occurring like on the 13th, and there was one earlier event where they kept them kind of locked away where they couldn't go and visit the site where they were supposed to go. But apparently some citizens did, and they did report, some unusual activity, a strange buzzing sound and such. But it wasn't until, the October 13th, 1917, when all these people were gathered, skeptics and believers alike, and it had been raining, and the report goes that there was suddenly the rain stopped and the clouds opened up, and where the sun should have been was this spinning disc, and then it started coming down out of the sky, it seemed like, and they were afraid that they were going to be crushed. And there were all these flashes of different colors, and there was even supposedly like angel hair. And there've been a lot of these similar things that have happened over the years, but that's one of the best examples. And Keel said that's probably one of the best documented flying saucer cases ever. Although, the religious community made it something else. But
right, that's not how history remembers it. History remembers it more as a religious experience than a UFO encounter.
Right, but from different, like Native Americans, he encouraged people to study Native American. Spend a day on a Native American reservation if you're near one. I got into that to some extent. My wife is part Cherokee. We used to have a sweat lodge on the hillside behind our home. I know that strange things do happen, and then it's kind of how you interpret. Often people in sweat lodges report little balls of light. Of course, in another setting, the balls of light would be little monitors from a spacecraft, maybe some people might presume or whatever. But we had gone to visit back in 1976. 1977, April 1977. This was my second time to visit a medicine man down in Pennsylvania, Sequanah.
Wow.
And I had been told by a lady who had some Native ancestry, who was a contact in Ohio, that she had witnessed things with him. And so I should go ahead and correspond with him. She gave me his contact information. And so I visited him, and then I took my wife down to meet him. And what happened was we had lunch with him, and then afterwards he took us into the living room, sat down in an armchair. We sat down in a divan across from him, and I just felt almost like I was going into a trance. I just sat there and closed my eyes. Wish I hadn't closed my eyes, because my wife said that he lit up his pipe, and of course in the Native American tradition, the Christian has the cross. The center one, the vertical one, goes extremely high. In the Native American, it goes equal distance, horizontal, in 4 directions. Well, she observed the smoke from this pipe suddenly going out vertically and then coming back together, and then going up and down horizontally, coming back together. It did it several times.
Wow.
And then at the end, it's just like a smoke tunnel between her and old Chief Lightfoot. And he said he just had he kind of smiled, I guess, a twinkle in his eye, and it was over. The spell was over. And
done. Yeah.
Yeah, done. And then, oddly enough, we got up to Maine to visit with my parents, and of course I live here in Tennessee, where she was born and raised now, and so we didn't even talk about that. I mentioned something about that. It was kind of odd that day, at the end of the day there, when we were in the living room, and I felt like I was really going under. And she says, well, and she mentioned the smoke then, and since then I've become more familiar with those symbols and the mandala symbol. Read about Young. My friend Dr. Greg Little, who's been working with me on the magazines, he's been a co-editor and a publisher for all of these 41 years, and he's written one of his first books was in 1984 called the Archetype Experience, and he's written since then much about Jung and how Jung thought, about the UFO phenomena, maybe some of it being symbolic. Although Jung was also, kind of on the fence too. He couldn't explain all of it as the psychological projection, because there were people who saw them and then they were tracked on radar too,
yeah.
So anyway, he was in the same boat as us. But that just gives you an example, and then we went back to Ohio and talked with Madeline Teagle in Cuyahoga Falls outside Akron. And she had introduced me to a lot of contacts and people in Ohio, and she had her own experience going back to 1950s. And we told her what had happened, and she turned around in her chair, and we looked at each other, my wife and I, because just turned her back to us. What's going on? And what she was doing is she was, kind of going into a meditative state. And we didn't know at the time. Did we say something wrong? Then she turned around and faced us and said, "That's their balanced way," which I kind of think is terms of what Jung expressed about a mandala. That was a sacred symbol to them, and that he passed something on to you, referring to Joan.
Wow.
So anyway, that was that. I used to kind of snicker at the idea of synchronicities. I used to think, well, that's just coincidence,
Yeah.
But I've had some experiences now since then, where, dang, I would have a dream and someone else had a dream that was parallel, and that person with a background with these kind of experiences, they were just too many, and it was kind of leading in a certain direction.
Yeah, there's something to the synchronicity phenomena for sure. I definitely believe that. Yeah.
So it's a journey.
It is. It's the world of UFO and UAP investigation and research is a never-ending journey, I think. You wrote a chapter of a book called Beyond UFOs. And that chapter is about UAP contact paradigms. And you draw some parallels between modern alien encounters and historical events like the aforementioned Fatima apparitions. So we kind of talked, we hit on it just a minute ago, where we were saying is, history remembers it, frames it as a religious, spiritual experience, and it's not really listed or remembered as a UFO experience, but you can put it in that category. So what aspects of Fatima, in your opinion, most strongly align with that classic UFO encounter?
Well, they reported it looked like a disc. It was moving around. We know the sun shouldn't be doing that. And there were all these different lights. And there were, there was there was also there were other children besides the one that was involved, because this had been going on for about 2 years. And there are a couple of researchers over in Portugal in recent years who have followed up, and they even met one woman who was involved in the phenomena, but she never ended, became a nun or anything. She got married and she lived a normal housewife type life with kids and such. But they interviewed her, and this being caused troubles for the I think some of the Catholic higher ups, because it wasn't dressed the way they thought it should be dressed. It was showing, some of the wear was, I think, considered sort of inappropriate, much less that it would be the Virgin Mary dressing that way.
True. Okay.
But so sometimes, it almost seems like a trickster type phenomenon. It gets your attention, it manifests, but it almost seems like it doesn't really want you to know its full identity, what it's, I don't know. And I know that Keel thought is a very dark thing. I try not to see it so much as dark as maybe just, using symbolic expressions and frames of reference that we don't really fully know how to put together and incorporate,
Yeah.
But anyway, I was glad to have the opportunity to write that 49-page article for Pre's, Beyond UFOs book, because there were just a lot of things that I felt needed to be shown, the similarities and so on, and how all these may fit together. If a cryptozoologist studies, these various creatures, a lot of times they're thinking in terms of it's simply something that, like a wild man, it's just escaped our capture, it's escaped our being able to hunt it down properly. But they've even got them down in Australia, Yowies, and all over the world. It's hard to imagine that we, like the flying saucers, we haven't got it in a laboratory somewhere. Of course, the rumors, of course, they're flying wild on that, but still, I kind of thinking in terms of the psychological. Keel recommended, studying the religious literature, the medical and psychiatric information. That was a recommendation he gave me, that the contact each ending was very similar to a lot of religious apparition experiences and so on. So I made a stab at that, and I tried to, also connect with people who were familiar with that kind of background. I mean, I took some college psychology and abnormal psychology, general psychology. Read. I got various books on the shelf by Jung, but I don't fully, it's like quantum physics. I don't fully understand. Even the quantum physicists argue about all the various points. How it hey,
Yeah.
It draws you in. I've had an obsession with this for 59 years.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder, am I crazy? There's so many.
It's easy to think that. Yeah, it is.
But because we'll be going somewhere like one of my parents' home in the past up in Maine, and I've read all these things and be going through a community. I tell my wife, there was a case here that happened. Just keep driving. Just keep driving. Don't stop anywhere. Don't ask me questions.
You're going to add to the length of the trip. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So speaking of Fatima and stuff like that, you mentioned John Keel a couple of times, and as well as Jacques Vallée, and they both suggested that belief systems reinterpret the phenomenon rather than just simply try to explain it. Do you think that culture determines how the phenomena presents itself or how we remember it?
Yeah, I would say, we can look at like in the Bible, Enoch and so on. Back in a lot of the ancient cultures, the chariots of the gods, as Eric von Däniken would say. Today we look at them as spaceships. It's part of our tech culture, and it's easy to look at it that way.
Yeah.
And Keel in his book, the Mothman Prophecies, he had this thing that's almost like a mantra. This expression, "Belief is the enemy." I thought that was quite interesting. We could use it as a mantra. Belief is the enemy, because to the cryptozoologist, they're investigating a Bigfoot sighting, and someone says, "Oh, well, at the time the Bigfoot was there was also a ball of light hovering over its head." But I'm just going to write down the Bigfoot story. The ball of light is not my field, or the nuts and bolts hardcore, strict-minded ufologist might have a case where suddenly, within a few days, which happens, poltergeist activity erupts in the home, family that had a close encounter with a UFO. Well, that's the parapsychology. You go to them about that, we're going to just document your UFO, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean,
but you can't just do that though. I mean, not and have a true scientific investigation. You got to document everything.
Yeah. And there might be some cases, which happens too, where it just goes against what the investigator believes. And they just, think, well, this is nuts. Well, I mean, for a long time, I think it was almost like, something that Dr. Hynek believed pretty strongly until later on, was that, the deal with Peter was the kiss of death, because everybody knows you're just lucky to have one sighting of an ET craft or something. That's but when somebody starts seeing multiple experiences, even aliens, well, NICAP.
Yeah, there's no way that can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, NICAP, National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena in Washington, D.C. Civilian group founded in 1956. They didn't want, it was okay for someone to see a craft, maybe for it to land, but if the door opened, there was an alien, that's one of our crackpot people. Just put that in the back of the file and get rid of it.
Yeah, you can't let bias interfere with your investigation either.
So, at least with APRO, Jim and Coral Lorenzen starting in 52, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, they did have, occupants but at the same time, they wanted them to be those that would get out of the craft and make, be like scientists, pick up soil samples and put them in a tube and take them back to the ship or something. If they started communicating something metaphysical or philosophical or religious, that sounds a little too deep for us. But Keel delved into the whole kit and caboodle. And, and not to say that he didn't make mistakes in the process. And, because when you're dealing, like, I know when I wrote my John A. Keel, The Man, the Myth, the Ongoing Experiences, which came out in 2019, as I'm going through this material, I noticed he made the comment about the case up in Canada back in the 1960s with the prospector who claimed he got burned by the flying saucer that had landed. He walked up to it and got burned, Steve Michalik. And he said that no one had ever found that place again, because some people just trying to enter into another, because he had other examples where people enter a place like they've entered another dimension. So he was using that case as an example.
Yeah.
When I looked into it further, I found out that, well, that was the case in the beginning. He tried to find a place for some investigators, I think from the Condon Committee, and he couldn't locate it, but they located it again later. So I had to check that one off the list,
Yeah.
But, I've seen a photograph of, Keel's desk back in the day, too. I mean, he was loaded with tons of information.
Yeah, he sure was.
Peter Jordan told me that he went into his apartment and he was going to sit down on the couch and he said, "Oh, don't sit on that. There's some of my important papers over there." And so finally he just sat on the floor because there was no room.
Oh, wow.
And, I've seen a picture where, his desk was covered with papers and all over the floor. And it's like, how did he ever get anything done?
How did you get? Yeah, I bet he knew where everything was at, though. That was his organizational system.
Yeah, because while Peter was there, he showed up on a shelf 3 boxes that had some information on the old Murray Island case from 1947. So, he did his best.
Well, we're going to have to take a pause here and try to pay some bills. So, going to let you guys listen to one of those nasty, pesky commercials, and I'll be right back in just about 60 seconds or so talking with Mr. Brent Raynes. You guys hang on and take a listen to this.
Kayak gets my flight, hotel, and rental car right, so I can tune out travel advice that's just plain wrong.
Bro, Skycoin. Way better than points.
Never fly during a Scorpio full moon.
Just tell the manager you'll sue. Instant room upgrade.
Stop taking bad travel advice. Start comparing hundreds of sites with Kayak and get your trip right. Kayak. Got that right.
Expedia and Visit Scotland invite you to come experience the beauty that awaits in Scotland. The sweep of wild coastlines, quiet lochs, and untamed landscapes. Fresh cuisine that feels rooted in the land. Come experience the kind of stillness that stays with you long after you leave. Plan your Scottish escape today at expedia.com/Visit Scotland.
Hey guys, I'd love to hear from you. Do you have a story, a question, or a topic you'd like me to cover? If so, you can reach me directly by email at sandman@parareality.com. Or, for a more personal touch, you can just call the Secret Bunker at 615-461-5001 and leave a message. Just know that by calling, you're giving me permission to feature your voice on the podcast. Again, that number to call is 615-461-5001. You want to stay up to date with all things parareality? Then follow me on all major social media platforms. You can find me on Facebook at sandman.parareality, or you can follow me on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok by looking for my handle at ParaRealRadio. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel by looking for ParaReality 1. That's ParaReality with the number 1 behind it. And don't forget to visit my website, parareality.com. That's where you'll find an archive of all of my past podcast episodes for free. You can also find the latest in paranormal news from all around the world under the Para News section. Your support means everything, whether you buy something from my store or leave me a positive review on whatever podcast app you're listening on. A 3-star or higher review goes a long way in helping this podcast reach new listeners, and I would truly appreciate it. Thank you. All right, everybody, I'm back with Mr. Brent Raynes talking UFOs and UAPs. And I had this question that I wanted to ask you before the break, but I didn't get a chance to, so I'm going to ask it now. There are a lot of the witnesses you cite, they experience things like paralysis and altered awareness, missing time, or trance-like states, stuff like that. So do you believe consciousness, particularly their consciousness, is being manipulated or somehow engaged or maybe, I don't know, co-created or something like that during these encounters?
Something. Yeah, and I really I know some of the early literature on psychic mediums. There's a book that psychiatrist Dr. Berthold Schwartz, who really back in the 70s when I was traveling around the country a lot, and I was visiting experiences and interviewing them and also different researchers, and I was in pretty well constant contact with him and sharing what I was finding. And he wrote the UFO Dynamics 2-volume book, and he was brought into the UFO field by John Keel because Keel felt more people who were, and so Dr. Schwartz was really kind of a go-to person a lot of times for John Keel. And so certainly when I got introduced to him back in 1973, right up till his passing in 2010, he was my go-to person too in a lot of respects, because he was a parapsychologist as well as a psychiatrist for a number of years, and then he happened to write an article for a medical journal back in 1968, and it was about 4 different people he had interviewed, felt they were very credible, but they described very incredible UFO experiences, and to them it was very real. So he went ahead and published this, but it was going to be a swan song. He was going to, after that, he was going to go strictly back to his parapsychology. But John Keel caught wind of what he had written and said, Mr. Keel, Dr. Schwartz, this is something that, since you already are familiar with all this parapsychology, why not incorporate the UFO study that you've already done some of in with your, study of the parapsychological things, the psychic things. And so that's exactly what he did. And it was a woman in Florida who had a close encounter on right around a military base where I met her in 1973. And I just happened to be in the Navy, and I had correspondence with this lady about a year before I went into service. And my ship became home ported at Mayport, Florida. And this is where a lot of this happened. And I didn't know her husband was in the Navy. And so anyway, her husband, 13-year-old son at the time, came across a flying disc with a dome on top, classic saucer, about 40 feet diameter. Made a kind of a rocking motion as it went down the road in front of them. Then it stopped at intersection, four-way intersection, and it waited on them to see which way they were going to go. And they got under it, paused, and then turned to the left. And their 13-year-old son in the back, he got out, rolled the window down, and was looking up at it and said, "There's some lights under there." And Ramona Clark, she got very scared for him and said, "Pull your head in there. You don't know what that thing may be radiating or something."
Yeah.
And so then it took off over a military base nearby. And they could hear something over a loudspeaker, and then two jets, interceptors, came from, I guess, Jacksonville Naval Air Station, and flew in, and then the craft turned a glowing red and then just took out over the Pacific. And he said they were going to one was kind of getting on one side of the craft and one on the other. They were going to kind of try to intercept it, and it left them, at accelerated high speed, very, very high speed, and left them way behind. But then after about 3 or 4 days, she said the home erupted with poltergeist activity. And then eventually there was, in the bedrooms at night, always around 3 a.m., would see beings. And that's another thing Keel was aware of, the 3 a.m. factor. And it was shortly after that I came across a guy who claimed that he had had an encounter on the St. Johns River while he was fishing with a UFO. And then this, while he was watching the UFO, he ended up on an island, and the tide was going out, so he was stranded there for a while. And this being with a cat-like face came up and shot a light at him, and he was temporarily paralyzed. And he began to have dreams always at 3 o'clock in the morning about the aliens and pyramids on Mars and stuff, all this weird stuff. And then of course Ramona had already described to me that this being one of the beings that was hovering over her while she was in a paralyzed state, laying in bed at 3 a.m., was took on a cat-like appearance, although it kind of shapeshifted. Once it looked like a former husband she'd had earlier, and then it became this cat-like face. And she was saying a prayer, and then it just sort of disappeared.
Wow.
So, I mean, really bizarre. But, there was things to me that indicated that we can kind of identify maybe some of the parts of the brain that maybe are being affected by this, because she would tell about hearing her name called and always on the left side.
Weird.
And then I came across other stories of people who had this same thing. And I asked one of Michael Persinger's colleagues, Todd Murphy, who actually makes these headsets that people can use to put on their heads, like, Dr. Persinger used to have that place at the university up in Ontario, Canada, that people could go into this chamber and create a certain frequency, and people would have like visions of, like a lucid images of strange beings or whatever, or some religious things. So anyway, there was a number of cases where I was coming across where people were hearing voices on the left side. And this one guy had ignored it for years until it told him, "You don't need to take this flight over to a foreign country your own safety. He tried to ignore it, but he said it was so insistent that he finally complied and didn't go. And as a result, when he found that if he'd gone to that country, there was like an earthquake and a tsunami, and he might have been killed.
Wow. Yeah.
And then the Dr. Puharich's Surgeon of the Rusty Knife. I was reading that, and this guy was this, under the influence of some spirit doctor. He would take a knife and he was operating on people without a license. He and Henry Belk, who ran the Belk Research group out of North Carolina at the time, and Dr. Schwartz had all these connections. He put me in touch with him, and I got to interview him. But they were both there as professionals to study this phenomenon. And in the book, which John Fuller wrote, describing how the doctor would always speak to him in his left ear. And then I came across another reference where psychic medium in England, spirit would always talk in the left ear. So I think it's got something to do with the brain hemispheres,
Yeah.
And Todd Murphy agreed when I talked to him in an interview. And so then later, I'm investigating a case here in Tennessee, up around Spring Hill. This gentleman who had just had a sighting of a UFO, he and his wife, flying by the house. And so I go to interview him, and I'm getting, what else unusual has ever happened to you? And he had all kinds of stories. One of them was where he was up in New York. A few years earlier, he was hunting, and he was alone. He had some hunting buddies, but he went out hunting on his own. And he said there was a deer at a distance, and but for some reason he didn't take aim and shoot at it. Instead, he just studied it. And he said all of a sudden it changed from a deer to a silver-suited humanoid figure. And he said, although I could see the entire figure clearly, the face, I cannot describe what the face was. I don't know why. And I thought, I've heard that one too. And then all of a sudden he took out his left hand, and a small silver ball rose up out of the being's hand, and suddenly it was in his face, hovering just inches away. And the next thing he knew, he was picking himself up off the ground. But anyway, what he was telling me, and his wife also shared this, was that he would, there's times when his left hand starts to shake, and he starts to feel kind of dizzy, and he'll see a haze when he's like talking to someone, and he'll suddenly get flashes about someone's father or mother or something, about something from their background. And she claimed that this happened with her when they met, that she broke down crying, saying, "How do you know all this about my father?" And he explained, it's just just something that happens to me. And so it was that same year on another investigation. I'm up in Nashville, and I meet Johnny Sands, who back in 1976, he was a stunt man, a singer, and he claimed while he was out there in Las Vegas, Nevada, he drove out into the desert area. He'd been out there before, and he was trying to find a certain place he was trying to get to. And there was this thing in the sky, and he thought it was maybe an advertising balloon or something, didn't pay much attention. He had car trouble, and he took it, raised the hood, and he's looking under the engine to try and figure out what the heck's wrong. And suddenly he notices two people nearby, but one of them approaches, and it's humanoid. And anyway, it comes up to him, and he takes a better look, and he sees that, wait, that's not a balloon. And he takes out his left hand, and there's a sphere, and it increases in size and raises up, and all of a sudden there's like explosions on the sparks. And he's told a story by the being that we are, endangering them and us, I guess, with regard to our carelessness with nuclear weapons and
Yeah.
a familiar story. And then there's just a whole series of bizarre experiences that happen, but it's like he's telling some people in this room somewhere about what happened to him. They're interviewing him, and suddenly these two guys come in and tell him they're from the star system Sirius, and they happen to look identical to the guy that was holding the sphere. And then the two of them take off after saying they're from Sirius, and they go out in the hallway, and anyway, Johnny tells one of them that's them. So they rush out, go down the hall, and the parking lot is empty, and the guys are nowhere to be seen. Where the heck did they go? How could they have disappeared? And so I've come across another thing. Jenny Randall's England, the Oz effect. What the heck is that? That's another anomaly, not just missing time, but there was a woman who was an attorney from New York, and she, and this was about the third time she had told me this story. And at that point, I said, I need to start studying more stories like this. She and her daughter come out of the theater, a pretty large city in New Jersey some years back, and there was they went into the theater, it was crowded. They come out and watch the movie. There's nobody there in the parking lot or in the theater, as they can see. And they walk out into the parking lot to get to the car, and they look up, and there's this huge craft, kind of delta, kind of like a triangle type thing, and there's an orb that comes out of it, moves around. And they go back to the house, and they each draw it separately, and think, wow, we saw essentially the same thing. And it was soon after that they started having phone calls from aliens, or something like that.
Oh, okay.
But so I thought, okay, the day that I thought after doing an interview with her about, okay, I need to really focus on these kind of Oz cases, that one of the writers from my magazine up in Ohio, who was pretty nuts and bolts, solid guy, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He'd been in the field since about 1968, Rick Hilberg. And he wrote me and says, Brent, I just had an experience I've never had in my life. And, I encouraged him, please let me know what happened. And what it was is he and his son are coming home from getting groceries, and suddenly they're getting close to their home, and suddenly, there's all these people, out mowing the yard or whatever, and suddenly they're in a different location, and it's like they're isolated. And I'm thinking, okay.
Like a time slip or something.
That was like the same day that this woman said that to me, and I said, I need to study that kind of thing. And he'd already told what happened to him to another UFO researcher, and we'd heard two similar stories, so I got in touch with her, and so I was already starting to gather that kind of, it's these synchronicities or whatever you want to call them. They're, in fact, I was trying a thing that Carl Jung suggested called active imagination. It's kind of, you go into a meditative state. You don't try to censor anything. You just let it all unfold. And as I'm doing that, I kind of enter the dream state, and I find myself in the dream up in my bedroom up in Maine, where I'm standing right about, I end up standing about the same place that I had in 1975 when I did all that, spent like the whole summer traveling, interviewing people from Maine to Florida. Mm-hmm. And I was back from that, and I was trying to make sense. I was kind of having almost like an existential crisis. I was I was really kind of into the religious Christian mode at the time, and but I was having people saying, well, how do you know, have you been baptized in water? Have you spoken in tongues? And I think, do I have to do that in order to know that, So I say, okay, I asked the Creator to show me something, so I maybe might provide some insight or something, but nothing that'll scare me. I emphasize that, 2 nights later, in this bedroom. It's a little after 11 o'clock, I remember. I'm getting into bed. I'm bone tired. I'm not even thinking about what I had asked in prayer. And all of a sudden, it's like I'm going back toward the door that goes into the hallway, which the light's on there. My father's in the bathroom. And this is all very, very real-like. In fact, I was convinced it was real, even though there was not only no fear, but also no question. I got to the middle of the room and I stopped, and I knew that there was someone behind me who stopped me. You know, normally something like that, I would turn around and look and say, "What's going on here?"
Mm-hmm.
No, I just continued to stare toward the open doorway. And all of a sudden, there were all these little balls of light, transparent, clear, pulsating light, balls of light swarming around. And at the bottom of the door, there was forming like a white four-legged small animal, you know. And then I'm like back in the bed, and I remember looking up at the ceiling, laying on my back. Usually, when I get into bed and I'm tired, I just dive in and pull the covers up over me, and I'm on my side or on my stomach, you know.
Yeah.
That was my habit back then. So anyway, there I was again. I think it was 2019 after doing this thing. I wake up in this dream. Maybe 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know exactly. I'd have to go back to the journal, but anyway, my mother's there, and we hug, and it's like, you know, I think later that was kind of odd. My dad was always interested in my studies. You know, they both passed away, but it was my mother, and she was someone who always thought, we need to get out of this crazy UFO business. But it seemed like there was no, you know, we had no disagreements. You know, father and son, mother and the son came together, and everything was good. Right after that, I hear from a woman in Nashville who I had met and recently, and also whose mother had an experience back in the 1950s out in Texas that changed her life, where her husband was at work at the time, and she was at home alone, and a UFO landed, and a being came out and contacted her, and she tried to get help. She went to a local pastor, and he didn't offer any kind of, you know, well, maybe, you know, need psychiatric help or something. But, you know, eventually she developed at the psychic level. She's got 2 grown daughters now up here in Nashville who are, who've seen things and experienced many things. And so I've communicated with both of them, but this one in particular that I've had a lot of contact with, she said that she just had a very strange dream and I was in it. Would you like to hear what it was, you know?
Oh.
Of course. Well, in hers, which turned out to be actually the day before my dream, I showed up at her house with some people who were TV repair guys, right? And her mother, who was deceased, was there.
Okay.
Now, she says her mother was talking to me, like, you know, she knew things about me, although we'd never met. And you know, she said, "I know you're concerned about your wife," because I had been kind of worried about her because of her COPD. But says, you know, she's going to do fine. And you know, and then there were, you know, over time, very quickly, there were other things similar to this. But in fact, about a month afterwards, there was another experience with a woman who I had met here in Tennessee, and she moved to Missouri. And she wrote me one day and said, "Brent, I just had a strange dream where I was sunburned." So I said, "Can we talk on the phone?" So that evening we talked, and in her dream, she was in a room with glass windows, and there were people sort of laying down or kneel down around her on the floor. She was the only one standing. And her deceased mother appeared to her and came up to her and said, do not need to be alone at this time. And she came up and hugged her. And then there was a bright flash coming through the windows. And then the dream ended, and she woke up and she said she had a sunburn over her body. I don't know, but it was it was just a series of these weird coincidences, and it all started.
Talk about synchronicity. There it is again.
Yeah. And this was around the time that someone, I was in touch with the family. The mother lived in, the whole family had all this UFO paranormal experiences, and the mother lived in Ohio. The daughter lived out in Las Vegas, and she just had an experience of seeing a huge craft out the window and heard noises in the house, and then soon afterwards, the mother informs me my daughter's also having these psychic experiences, and I said, okay,
wow,
could we do a long distance experiment? And so her daughter tries to tune in, and there's she gives me these initials, and I couldn't figure out who those initials belonged to. So I gave up, and then about, again, 2 days later, I have this dream, and I'm going to this place where a friend of ours who has passed away, who was a psychologist up in Ohio, and she did Tai Chi, and she had to travel all over the world. It was just her, I think, and she really didn't have any close family or whatever, so she would save up her money and go to places like Easter Island and Brazil or wherever, and she'd have pictures. And so once a year we'd meet, and she'd come to our county because she came to practice Tai Chi at a local health spa here close to us. And so we had to develop a friendship, because she came to one of our sweat lodges we had here. And that's how we became introduced. So like attracts like sometimes. Yeah. And anyway, in the dream, I'm going down this road to the spa, and she's standing in front of the gym. And then I wake up and I think, wait, Margaret Ross. Wait, what about the middle name? So I get up and I check the computer, check her obituary. That fits, and then about 20 minutes later, I get this message telling me more or less, no matter how old we are, we should always follow our interests and so on,
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, like an old pair of socks, long as they're still usable.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, wow, but anyway.
Well, I hate to end the conversation, but we are out of time. And I always end my interviews by asking my guests pretty much the same two questions. So before we get out of here, I want to ask you, number one, where can my listeners find the books that you've written or co-authored?
Okay, well, they can go to our website, where our monthly online magazine appears each month, apmagazine.info.
apmagazine.info.
Okay. Yep, and they will show not only pictures and links to my books, 3 books, but also the books that my colleague and publisher Greg Little has written as well over the years.
Okay. Hey, give me that website one more time.
Okay, apmagazine.info.
apmagazine.info. I'll make sure I have it right down here so everybody can see it. And lastly, if there's someone out there that's listening to this podcast and maybe they've had an experience or some sort of encounter with a UAP, and they're looking for help in understanding what they saw or what happened to them, or advice, or maybe just need someone to talk to about it, are they able to get in touch with you for help?
Sure. Yeah.
And how can they do that?
Well, there's also a link in the magazine on the website where they can reach me, but also they can just my name as like one word, just small letters, BRENTRAYNES, which is my name, Brent Raynes. Always like one word at yahoo.com.
Brent Raynes at yahoo.com, and I'll have it right down here for everybody.
Awesome.
Mr. Raynes, it has been a pleasure to talk to you. You're a wealth of information. So many great stories, man. And how could you not, after almost 60 years of investigating the UFO phenomenon? And there are a lot of questions that I had on the back burner that I didn't get to ask you. So I may just get you back on the podcast here soon and ask you some of these questions that I didn't get a chance to get around to, because you've got some really interesting theories, and you touched a little bit on some of it, like about glowing spheres with in people's left hands, and ultraterrestrials, the cosmic trickster, which you mentioned, but we didn't get a chance to get into. But I'd really like to hear all of your stuff about that. So I'd like to get you back on one day and have you talk about all of those things.
Sure, that will be no problem. I appreciate it and enjoy it.
Yes, sir.
I'll try to next time let you ask me the questions. And
no, it's good. It's good. I enjoy hearing the stories. So this is Mr. Brent Raynes, and his contact info is Brent Raynes right here at the bottom at yahoo.com. And if you want to find his books, you can go to apmagazine.info.
Right.
Once again.
Or they can just go to Amazon.
Or you can find anything on Amazon.
That's right.
All right. Mr. Raynes, I'm going to have you hold on the line for just a minute while I close it out, and then we'll be right back, okay?
Okay. Good.
All right. Well, that about does it for this evening. Mr. Raynes, I want to thank you again for the fascinating conversation. Man, you bring such a wealth of knowledge to the UAP topic, and it's been a real pleasure talking to you tonight. And I want to thank you, my listeners, for listening, or if you happen to watch the video version, thank you for watching. And before I close it out, though, there are a couple of more things. So unfortunately, I got to do that one last obligatory commercial break, and then we'll be right back to close it out.
You've listened to the stories. You've questioned the truth. Now it's time to wear it. Head over to ParaReality.com and check out the official ParaReality merchandise shop. T-shirts featuring the official podcast logo, the iconic ParaReality all-seeing eye, plus mugs, hats, totes, pillows, stickers, and yes, even something for your pooch. But while you're there, don't stop at the merch. Look a little closer. Dig a little deeper. Somewhere on the site, you'll find the entrance to the secret bunker, the members-only section of ParaReality.com. Inside, the ParaReality top secret files. Real FBI documents on UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, Adolf Hitler, and more. Plus classified audio, some of the strangest messages ever left on the secret bunker hotline, and access to a secret podcast side project that's never been released publicly. And here's the best part. It's all absolutely free. Once you're in, don't forget to claim your free ParaReality Podcast Secret Bunker t-shirt. Just make sure you place your order. The truth is out there. The bunker is waiting. Visit ParaReality.com and find what you weren't supposed to.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Amazon presents Jeff versus Taco Truck Salsa. Whether it's Verde, Roja, or the orange one. For Jeff, trying any salsa is like playing Russian roulette with a flamethrower. Luckily, Jeff saved with Amazon and stocked up on antacids, ginger tea, and milk. Habanero? More like habanero, yes. Save the everyday with Amazon.
All right, welcome back, everybody. If Mr. Raynes is right, and the evidence suggests that he may be, then disclosure isn't just about revealing craft or bodies. It's about confronting something far more unsettling, and that's human consciousness itself may be a gateway. For centuries, we've labeled these encounters as things like angels or demons or fairies, gods, visitors, or aliens. But maybe those labels say more about us than whatever is interacting with us. John Keel, he warned that the phenomena doesn't want to be understood in just simple terms. It adapts, it misleads, it wears a mask, and perhaps its greatest trick is convincing us that it exists outside of us. As season 20 continues its deep dive into UFOs, contact, and disclosure, tonight's conversation reminds us that the biggest unknown isn't what's in the sky, it's what's happening right here in the human mind. I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. ParaReality will return next Friday at 8 p.m. Central U.S. time, so make sure you turn on, tune in, and find out. I hope that this podcast opens your minds up to new ways of thinking, expands your consciousness, and produces a change in the way you see the world. If you wish to change, you must lift the veil of ignorance that has been cast over your eyes. Only then will you see the true power of the universe. Hope you have a great weekend, a great week ahead of you, and I will see you again next Friday. Good night, everybody.
If you wish to change, you must first lift the veil of ignorance that has been cast over your eyes. Only then will you see the true power of the universe.
There's a new way to Sweet Green. Meat wraps. Handheld, hearty, and made for life on the move. With bold, chef-crafted flavors, fresh ingredients, and over 40 grams of protein, they're built to satisfy without slowing you down. Try wraps today in the app or at order.sweetgreen.com. Available at all participating locations.
Struggling with weight loss? Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet is a clinically developed nutrition program designed to promote fat loss while protecting lean body mass. Developed at USC's Longevity Institute, it assists the body in entering a fasting-like state that helps reset metabolism and target visceral fat. In just 5 days, Prolon offers a science-backed approach to weight loss without extreme restriction or guesswork. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/now.